Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Behind the Cyber Shield, a veteran CISO's perspective. I'm Shilpa Goswami, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Now about our speaker, Ricoh Danielson. He has extensive experience in handling cyber incident response, cybersecurity, information security, privacy, and compliance. He is a digital forensics expert for criminal and civil cases and has handled cyber incidents for major world-renowned healthcare, financial, and retail firms. Rico is a graduate of Thomas Jefferson School of Law, UCLA, and the University of Arizona. He is also a U.S. Army combat veteran. He has experience in incident response for 10 years of incident response expertise for major newsworthy breaches, digital forensics for 15 years of digital forensics expertise for criminal and civil cases. In legal, he has 15 years of representing digital evidence in courts, and in media, 5 years as a cybersecurity media expert consultant. So without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you, Rico.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon and good evening. Whatever part of the world you're in, I hope you're doing well. And I'm proud and actually very excited to be here. So the video that they showed you in regards to the CISO, I actually took it upon myself. I'm already a CISO. I already have all the certifications, but I only found it fair to go ahead and go through that course. And I'll put it this way. When I went through that course, I highly, highly recommend going through that course because you have other CISOs in there, you have other directors, people who want to be CISOs, and it actually provides quite a bit of information. On top of that, the role, the remediator, and also the context is actually very up to date, up to speed, and it's very true. It's a very good course. So if you're going to go through it, it has my 100% endorsement. You guys will really enjoy it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, the behind the shield, right? The cyber shield, and my perspective on what it means to be a CISO, what it means to get there, why did I want to get there, more specifically, why do you might want to get there, and from a holistic perspective. Okay, so when people talk about, hey, I want to be a CISO, some of the things that we actually kind of run through are obviously myself, right? But where does it start? Where does the vision to being a CISO start? The future of the journey ship and the path forward and the truth about being CISO. So let's start there, like number one, okay? Where does the vision of CISO start? My vision was I actually met great leaders, not throughout the military and also law enforcement, but there's always one person that stuck out that was either leading the charge as a CISO or leading the charge doing information security. And I remember great leaders, one guy named Daniel Sergile, a person named Pamela, Corey Hildebrand, and all these other people, that they were just really good leaders in saying, hey, we have a problem statement, okay? Whether we're doing incident response being a CISO or whether we're doing healthcare or banking, we had a starting point. Hey, here's our industry. Where do we want to be? And the next part is we actually contribute to each other's successes of the vision of being a CISO or the vision of the office of the CISO, okay? Something we have to be very mindful of. I've met tons of CISOs around the world, and this is a title. This is not who you are, okay? So one of the things that we be very mindful of is the office of the CISO. What do you want it to be? Imagine it being something you're creating and you're going to hand off to your child, or you're going to hand off to a colleague or a dear friend or your wife or your husband, whomever, right? How do you want this CISO to be, and what do you want them to do? And that's for us to create the vision. Or is it going to be more of a risk management CISO? Is it going to be more of a governance? Is it going to be more of a a tactical, technical CISO? Remember, there's different layers of CISOs. One of the things I've recently seen is there's a corporate CISO, and then there's a CISO, right, for each organization, and that's more of the MSSP route, right? The other type of CISOs that I've seen is there's a CISO, right, and then there's a B CISO, which is a business security officer, and that's in charge of an individual business line. A big example is a company called Caterpillar here in Nashville, and I think they're based out of Illinois, Peoria, Illinois. They actually have multiple CISOs amongst each different business line because they have their own bank, they have their own retail service, they have their own product service. So it really depends on what the vision of the CISO you want it to be. Now, when I sat with these individuals and I sat with these organizations and I said, okay, so what does our future vision look like? What does the journey path look forward? And I just know it sounds like very, hipsterish. I'm like, oh, the journey path, right? But the reality is you're going to go through multiple iterations of this CISO. And sometimes you as a CISO, I myself, have to fall back on my technical expertise, right? I'm going to give you an example. I believe that every CISO and how they got there and why they got there is because they mastered their skill set, their core competency. Usually it's 1 to 3, right? Mine was incident response and digital forensics. I've mastered that and I'm really good at that. And I said, okay, I can do these other 19 domains of being a CISO. Now, some other people are just really good at all of them, which is amazing. I really suggest you do that. But the same aspect, it's very difficult to be the expert in everything. So that's why you have a team to go with you. So the office of the CISO, you want to kind of strategize, okay, what am I really good at? Am I really good at managing the risk? Am I really good at, doing the technical work, the tactical work? Because there are going to be some positions where you might, achieve or you might get into, depending on the organization, where you are a technical CISO and the person who's going to be doing the job, that's you. So that means you actually have to put up or shut up, right? Put out or get out. So the real hard truth about being a CISO, okay, and this is kind of the sober reality nobody told me, okay, you are making business decisions as a chief information security officer. That means you're making privacy decisions, you're making security decisions, you're making business decisions with the information security mindset and also information security thoughtfulness, okay? So where you might, let's just take an example here. You might say, hey, you might work with a product manager, okay, doing role-based security, and you say, we need to straighten it up more. And because of your security influence, it's going to cause a user impact or a usage impact. So the question you want to ask yourself is, does your initiative really need to be happening, or can you compromise, or can you meet halfway? The trend that I'm starting to see in cybersecurity and also specifically CISO is, in the beginning of my journey ship being a CISO, was you rule with an iron fist. Okay, that means security says this, you're going to do this, and this and that. Yeah. In the last 5 to 6 years from this day on backward, I've seen cybersecurity be a complementary service to the business, right? And the be CISO themselves is you have to be fluid and fluctuate. Bruce Lee said it the best. You can be like water. You can be so much powerful like water, you can destroy communities, or you can be fluid and actually feed the community. So it's your choice. The truth about being a CISO, it's a very, very stressful job. I'm gonna tell you that right now, okay? I've been a CISO for hospitals, banks, credit unions, retails, McDonald's, right? All that good stuff. And the truth about it is it's 50-50 depending on the day, and it's more on the 80% of you have to know the business acumen and you have to know how to talk to people. The other part is these CISO jobs come with big salaries. I'm not gonna lie, okay? And it's great for you because you'll make a lot of money, but just remember this, is it worth the cost of your mental health and also your behavioral health and whatnot? I've met the true reality of CISOs where they're irate and crazy. I've met plenty of them. And then I met other CISOs are like, hey, let's figure it out. They're problem solvers. Let's figure it out. They're really good with people. So the question you have to ask yourself is, where are you going to start in your CISO journey? What is your vision looking like? If that's training, if that's more hands-on technical experience, or is that a mix? So you have to define this for yourself. And also the office of the CISO. Who do you want your successor to be, okay? Because someone's gonna have to succeed you. And then what I want you to do from there is kind of lay out a plan forward. Like, hey, here's a path forward. Here's kind of what we're looking at. And always tell the truth in that journey to the next person. Because I think there was a president in the world a long time ago, the United States president. He said, I want you to sit down and write 2 letters. And this has to do about the truth about being leadership in CISO, because CISO is about leadership. The first letter is, if you run into any problems, blame everything on me, okay? And then the second letter was, sit down, write a letter. And I find that very funny because I've actually had to sit in that specific situation where I've written a letter and I said, hey, I'm leaving, blame everything on Ricoh, it's okay. And then the next one is like, dude, I'm sorry, man, you're responsible now, you got to blame yourself. So it's quite fascinating when we see those things. So when we talk about where do we start, right? What does ground zero look like? And I know there's gonna be a lot of questions and whatnot, but I always say is I took this upon myself is I wanted to be a CISO so bad, right? I wanted to go out there and have the CISO title. I actually have a shirt that says CISO, but I never knew why I wanted to be a CISO. And I think it correlated back to the military. And my time in the military was I just wanted to lead people because I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that person. Like, oh, there goes that guy, Ricoh CISO, right? Whatever. But in reality situation, I didn't have the core fundamentals. So that's when you have to actually look at yourself and understand what are the gaps, right? CAPS, corrective action plans. You have to give yourself, okay? You have to sit there and say, hey, I have a no nonsense, no BS assessment of myself. Where are my technical skills and where are my tactical skills and where are my people person leadership skills? And then you have to close that gap, okay? I'm gonna give you a story. So my first CISO gig was with a medical chart or medical coding company. Okay, they're a reimbursement company type deal, and this was many, many, many years ago. I went there. I remember, so I went to the job, and it was internet security. So that told me that they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what they wanted. So my ground zero was I'm going to go there. I have all these cool decks. I have this information, I have statistical information. And when I showed up, I realized nobody was doing security. They just had a firewall and they had email. That's it. And it was my responsibility. It was my ground zero to say, okay, what are the fundamentals? What are the 19 fundamentals? When I refer to 19 fundamentals, I look at high trust, HIPAA, and stuff like that. What are the fundamentals here that I need to start doing? Access control, network control, email protection, multi-factor authentication, stuff like that, right? I found myself very interesting. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go to the office and I'm gonna go there and have people do this with me and for me. And it was me. I had to do 19 different projects and domains all at one time to secure this organization. So the weird part is I had no clue what I was doing about 100% of the time, right? I say that facetiously, but I can sit here and reflect backwards and say, okay, what was I doing in that time? and I remember making this checklist, and it was, I think, over 400 things to do. And I'm like, well, I can only do some things, and what are the easy things? So I reprioritized these things and said, okay, cool, I'm gonna do that. Mind you, I was working 12, 13, 14 hours a day. On top of that, I had to fake it till I make it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to these trainings. I'm going to go to CISSP, CISM, CISA, all these trainings. So in the evening, I was doing that. And in the reality situation, what I took from that was nobody was going to do it for me but me. And the sooner that I came to that, the realization, the better. And here's the hard part about it, is I actually burned out from that job. I was there for, I think, about 14 months. And I remember grinding my teeth at night, and I couldn't sleep, and I was having nightmares and whatnot. But the reality situation is because I didn't know what I was doing. And I thank God that that business closed down eventually for some other reasons. And I was like, oh, good, thank God, because I don't quit, right? That's another thing, another attribute of being a CISO is that you have to have the marathon mentality of never quitting. You can take breaks all day. You can take breaks to tie your shoelaces, rehydrate, take mental health day or whatever, but CISOs do not quit. We don't have a quit in our body. We cannot quit because we are the only ones who are going to carry the program forward. I hope you see the importance of why it is to create this image, this program, this office of the CISO, because once you set the tone, remember, you can't keep doing it forever. You're going to go do something else, okay? Whether you're going to be a CIO, CTO, CFO, whatever. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to hand the baton off. So you have to be very mindful of yourself. So on this one, what I would say is what is your ground zero? You got to actually really assess yourself. Are you even ready to be a CISO? And if you are, great, cool, no problem. If someone says, hey, you need millions of certifications to be a CISO, that's not true. I met plenty of CISOs who you have two parallels, right? You have the certification route, right? CISA, CISM, CISSP, EC Council CISOs, really good program. And then that's kind of it, right? And then you have another parallel, which is nothing wrong with it. I said on both sides, is more of the formal education, like a bachelor's, a master's, and a couple certifications, and which is really, really good to have. But both of those, you got to be able to manage the program. You got to be able to manage people. You got to be able to manage how you're getting there, why you're getting there, and furthermore, you got to do an analysis at every month of saying, okay, how far am I from the goal, and how far am I from hitting the goal, and how far am I from my skills gaps? Another suggestion to do is I suggest training every year. So I buy the CISSP and also the EC Council book every year. Every year, I don't care what it costs me, I'm going to sit down with it. And also there's a couple of different books that I review every year throughout the year. And then on top of that, at the very end of the year, I have a little bit more time. I will sit down and actually try a new skill set, whether that's, PAM, privileged access management, new multi-factor authentication, more of the technical get your hands on deals, because you never know when you're going to need to go back on those skills, right? Because at some point, here's another trend that I'm starting to see in the CISO ship is that CISOs are finishing their time as a leader, as their chief information security officer, and going back to what they usually do, what it was, whatever that is, right? I'm starting to see it now. Another trend is kind of brings us to our next slide here is the different types of CISOs, okay? Now, the different types of CISOs can range, okay? I've been all these types of CISOs before, and I can tell you right now, some are easier than others, and some are not fun, and some are fun, okay? The question you have to ask yourself is, what are you protecting? Why are you protecting? And what can you do for the business? Remember, this is a business-related information, so let's talk about CISO. And this deck, we're going to spend some time on this, okay? The different types of CISO. So the first one's going to be a startup CISO. That's your person who, we got some money, went to venture capitalists, we got $10 million. Everybody needs to get a little bit of a salary, and we're going to invest heavily into the product. And Ricoh, you're in charge of being our CISO. Get us to the finish line, whether it's a high trust certification, whether it's a HIPAA certification, SOX 2, Type 2, anything like that. Like, we need to get there. So this is me starting up the program. This is me going from ground zero. That means you have to stand up the EDR, you have to stand up the endpoint detection response, you have to stand up the email protection, the ACLs. Like, your hands are in everything, and you have to get the business going. Remember, it's a startup position. One of the things that I'll tell you be very mindful of is that you're drinking from a fire hose, you're running 1,000 miles an hour on fire, and on top of that, you're not going to get any sleep. So pace yourself. Everything cannot be done within a day. As they would say, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. As a matter of fact, it took 4 centuries. That's what I thought, or that's what I think. And they're still discovering different aspects of Rome. So when you're in the startup CISO position, there's no wrong answer because nobody has the answer, okay? So you are the answer. Just be the answer. And in a basketball terminology is every shot you don't take, you're not going to make, right? So as being a startup CISO, you're going to take some shots, you're going to miss, you're going to fail, and it's going to be painful, okay? And just being straight up with you 100%. So if you ever see on the cool LinkedIn, startup venture capital firm looking for a CISO, just know that those are late nights, hard work, and turmoil, okay? All right, so when it goes to operational CISO, now that you've created the program, the office of the CISO, you have all the cool tools, you have all the cool processes, you're moving, you're shaking, shucking and jiving and whatnot. Now you go into the operational CISO ship, which is like, hey, the business is operating, how do we protect it? I always correlate to the saying is, we're the teachers and the business are the kids in recess, right? They're gonna run around, they're gonna play, you're gonna be like, hey, don't do that, sit down, why are you yelling? This, that, and the other. It's just much like managing children, okay? You have to bring it in, say, okay, we're doing an operational deal, and within our recess confinements, right, within the playground confinements, we can let anybody do anything, but how do we go about safely securing it? Do we put more by bumper car, safety bumpers over here, or do we put more restrictions over here? Who can go over here? Only teachers are allowed over here. Only CISOs and executives are allowed in this area. That's when we start defining your product manager and also your program development and also your development for the application you're doing. Okay. At some point, you're going to start getting into this area of sustainment. Now, sustainment is, we're sustaining, we have a 3-year plan. Our plan is not to do anything too crazy in the next 2 to 5 years. And the reason we want to do that is so we can sustain these certifications, or whether we want to sustain some sort of regulator requirement. So you'll be in between the operational and the sustainment. Now, sustainment is a good position to be, because what you're doing is actually taking over for somebody, or you're just sustaining operations. As they would say, is don't rock the boat. Okay, just keep us in the deal, keep us off the news, keep us out of incidents, and let's just sustain operation. Okay, that's all we want to do. Just easy, easy, easy. So those are some of the things you want to be very mindful when it comes to sustaining operations. The other thing is, we have to go back and forth in regards to sustainment and also operations, because you might have to adjust certain operations to ensure it's sustainable. Okay, what worked in the startup phase of like, yeah, let's just go ahead and deploy code, no code commits, don't worry about it, is not going to work in sustainment. And here's why. I'll give you an example. I was working for this medical company in Florida, and they would just, I call it point, shoot, and click, right? And they would say, we're going to do a code commit, we're going to develop, and just go and do, and without testing, without an SDLC lifecycle, without some sort of controls or mechanisms or verification. And they were good, they were pretty good about 80% of the time. The rest of the time, they would cause all sorts of operational issues, like, hey, the platform's down, it's not working, users can't upload medical charts, you can't have this, you can't have that. And when I had to fly down to Florida at one point, it was like, hey, development team, you guys are amazing, y'all are our rock stars, but we need to have a process in place. We need to have some sort of way to, validate. We need to have some sort of way to do some security checks, debugging, and this is more of development, right? So in the beginning of that startup was easy, but in order for us to sustain operations, just to sustain operations, that wasn't going to work. So I had to change. So thus forth, we created a process and to help them sustain their own operations and development. At some point, if you've gone through the first top 3, you're going to get to a point in your CISO-ship or your leadership, whatever it is, someone's going to call you and say, hey, I need you to come here and disrupt the show for a short period of time. Yes, you heard me correctly, disruptive. I'll give you a story here. So I was working with another company in Phoenix, and this guy showed up. He was a consultant. He was an older man, and he showed up and he said, hey, I'm here to blow stuff up and cause disruption so we can get things where we need to. That made no sense to me. I was like, well, we're sustaining. He goes, I get that, but we need to transform this into another area of business, and because we need to transform. We're doing, I think we're a big key player in the marketplace. We need to be an even bigger key player in the marketplace. We need to be the McDonald's of whatever we're doing. So cool, no problem. He goes, and the way we do that is to transform that. And the way you transform that is you break things apart. Now I was like, whoa, 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 what about our, certifications? What about, our legal requirements? And he's like, yeah, we're still going to do those things, but at the same aspect, we are actually going to transform this organization. So what that meant, it was for me was, am I right? Am I the right guy for the show and also the job? And to answer your question, honestly, I was not. And that was very, very true. So another thing you have to be very mindful of is, as CISOs, is you're going to get fired, you're going to get laid off, you're going to get let go. And this is why usually the tenure of a CISO is right about 2 to 4 years. If you can get 18 months out of a CISO, perfect. Remember, the bigger the organization, the slower the machine, the more time you're going to be there. As a startup CISO, you'll probably be there for about 2 to 5 years. Operational, 2 to 3 years. Sustainment, you'll probably be there for 2 to 4 years. Transformative, you'll probably be there for 18 months. Because you're there to transform something. Like you're there as the expert. You've been there for so many years. You've been a CISO for so many years. Now you know how to transform things. Another example is I was working for a very, very large global bank, and they had 2 CISOs, and we're in the merger and acquisition process season. So that means we would go out there, buy local credit unions, go buy global banks or whatever, and just make the deal happen. And part of that was bringing on people. Transformative CISO-ship is whenever you're going to go buy organizations and merge them together. I just want to be very honest with everybody is that you're going to have fallout, and you're going to have people who are pissed off. You're going to be people who are welcome, who are happy, stuff like that. Remember, you're going to have to transform things. Imagine having a blended family, okay? Mom, dad have kids. I'm sorry, mom has kids from the prior engagement, dad has kids from prior engagement, and you bring them together. What happens there? What happens is a point of friction, okay? That's what happens. So you're gonna have to learn how to not only address certain people, different attributes, temperaments, personalities, and whatnot. That's another thing I want to tell you about as well. The personality of a CISO. Everybody has their own personality, and I suggest you have your own personality and be rememberable. A friend of mine, Jordan Lambro, would always tell me he always wore a bow tie, and I would always remember him, and he was always rememberable, and he was always nice. You are going to come to the point, and you're going to meet people who are extremely difficult, or passive aggressive, or just overall happy, who want to collaborate, right? Do not let it determine the type of personality that you have, because remember, you are a chief. Remember that word, chief information security. You are leading it, so people are looking to you for professionalism, to cause disruption in a good, positive way. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but I'm telling you right now, people are looking at you for that. So that being said, when you're transforming your office of CISO, you are going to have probably IT underneath you. You probably have security, regulations, compliance, and whatnot. All these types of personalities are extremely different in their own nature. Some are more pragmatic, some are more emotional, and some are more just like, hysterical, right? It is your job to take the transformation of that and make it to what you want it to be. Now, when we talk about regulator CISOs, this is more for like the financial firms, the heavily regulated healthcare industries. If you're working for like a huge hospital, that's it right there. So what's going to happen here is you're going to sit there and you're going to meet with regulators. And I'm not going to lie to you, these are some of the driest meetings I've ever had in my life. They're going to be like, well, we want to talk about audit. And I'm a decent auditor, right? It's not what I wake up to go to be. I'm like, oh, it's a rough pill for me to swallow. But you're going to have to play this game. You're going to have to know your regulations. You're going to have to know your rules and regulations. You're going to have to know your cyber privacy, whether it's GDPR, whether it's Mexico Stata, or whether it's Middle Eastern. So it really depends. And then on top of that, if you're in the love of the United States, you're gonna have to know all 50 states' regulations. The hard part about that, it's very difficult to go back and forth on those things. Okay. Generally speaking, on the regulator CISO, you will definitely see a lot of attorneys like myself. I went to law school. It helped me quite a bit understand what the rule says and what the suggestion is and what the guidance is. Okay. I want you to think of like Law and Order, the show, okay, where it's like, here's the rules, here's a regulation, here's a process, and stuff like that. So if you find yourself and that fancies you, I hope you have a good time with that. So I hope you really enjoy that. But I want to go back to the journey ship of Ground Zero really quick, okay? These two slides correlate within themselves. So whenever you are going, let's just say you find yourself, you have an identified gap, which is, you know what you need to do, you need to identify it, and then also you need to have a corrective action plan to go with it. And let's just say you're more specifically in the sustainment area. The question I would pose to you is, how do you continue to identify gaps and caps of yourself, right? and of the business, and not inadvertently become a transformative CISO. See, by nature, operational, sustainment, and transformative CISO kind of go in cycles, right? I would say within the first year and a half to 2 years, you're just doing operational CISO-ship, and then you need to gather as much information as you can so you can make those decisions to transform in a certain way. But whenever they hire you to be a very transformative CISO, you have to take a battlefield assessment and ask yourself really, how are we doing, why are we doing it, and where we're going to go for that specifically, okay? So the question I want to ask you guys, and we can answer this here in a little bit, is what type of CISO are you wanting to be, and what type of CISO are you right now, and where do you see it being, where do you see it going for you? So some of the action forward is, we have to close the gap, okay? I'm going to go back to the slide here in a second. So when we talk about closing the gap, take a quantified, qualified inventory of yourself, of what it takes to be a startup. Like on one line, say, hey, to be a startup CISO is over here. And then on top of that, to be an operational CISO is these qualifications and also these types of training, personality skill sets. Personality skill, I'm gonna tell you right now, you gotta be able to deliver to an executive board. If you don't know how to do that, I suggest seeking a mentor for that. The executive board is a viper pit, I'll be honest with you. Those are business decisions are being made millions of dollars at a time, and usually there's little to no emotion to it. So just, if you keep it logical, keep it qualified data, try not to vary off into the emotional state of that, okay? So be, know, and become the CISO, okay? So when we talk about be, know, and become the CISO, each one of these startup CISOs, operational CISO, sustainment CISO, transformative, regular CISO, are different, right? In order for you to be a CISO, not everyone's going to go through the whole cycle of these. Some of them are just going to go to sustainment and whatnot, and which is great, okay? But in order for you to know and become the CISO, is each one of these is going to have different types of skill sets for different types of requirements, okay? So the question I want you to ask yourself is, okay, if I want to be an operational CISO, what do I need to know? What do I need to be? And how am I going to execute on that? Okay, because more operations is going to be more around the business acumen and more around the product to market, and how can I create security as an add value and a revenue generator. So here's another thing. Here's a pro tip. Okay, when you're doing your CISO updates, your decks, and also your executive briefing, I highly suggest you put a bullet point in there, say, how has security contributed to top line revenue? Look, we're all in business together. CISO rolls up to the CEO, which is the chief everything officer, right? The chief executive officer. That person usually thinks in money. Security is always being seen as a operational expense, and we should actually look at it as a contributing factor to top line revenue. And the way you do that is two ways. One is, we did these things to gain the business of X, and it equals this amount of money, okay? X amount of actions were done to connect this amount of money, to get this amount of money business. The other part on the inverse would be, hey, we stayed out of the news. We were able to avoid incidents. We managed, 1,100 incidents this month, this many alerts, and this is how much it quantified or qualified. Cost of a breach is right about $1.5 million. So if anything, that's your baseline. You would say, hey, CEO, CFO, the value of a chief information security officer is $1.5 million and above. So that's some good information. Always have those two data points in your decks and also your executive briefing, because you have to talk money to this to the executive organization, executive level at the organization. Okay. So when it comes to also additionally to know, be, and become a CISO, you can't be the master at everything, but you're going to have to know a lot of things. So that being said, is you want to ask yourself is, what do I know? What do I don't know? What should I know? And who knows what I don't know? Okay. There are going to be all these dinners you're going to be invited to. As soon as you put CISO in your title on LinkedIn, I swear I get invited to dinners left and right. I've been invited internationally to go speak at other Middle Eastern areas, which I highly recommend. Every CISO is fighting the exact same battle in a different way, okay, in a different stage. So what I'll suggest is go network and go with these people, go understand their products, because you never know where you're going to go next. You never know what's your next business deal. You never know where you're going to go. I never thought that I was big on financial, right? I was big on, I'm going to go be a CISO at the financial firms because they pay the most, right? They pay $500,000 to $1 million on salary, which is amazing. But I didn't realize that I had a really good acumen in healthcare and taking products to market and developing a cybersecurity program that does, add revenue to that. So, some things you'll be surprised where you're going to go next, because don't ever exclude anything out of your pocket. The last part is always going forward. Okay. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this slide right here, and if you take the methodology of always going forward, is you got to have a starting point. I'll put it this way: if you're a CISO, or if you're about to be a CISO, and somebody puts you in operational sustainment CISO, and you don't know what you're doing, or you have very little skill set, you're probably going to fail, and you're going to fail miserably, and that's okay, because failure is part of the process. I would say is, if you can become a deputy CISO with an operational CISO-ship or sustainment or director, if you will, and driving those different attributes, I think you'll be very successful. But as you see, these are circular positions and circular journey ships that you actually need to be a part of. And you should always have the methodology of always going forward, because startup will only get you so far. And if you want to just be a startup CISO, that's all you're going to be known as. And these venture capital firms, big tech and whatnot, are just going to be like, hey, I got new product. And that's all you'll be doing. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But at some point, you have to grow up and grow forward to be the next best thing. So some of the things, you take all these types of different CISOs, ask yourself, what type of CISO do you want to be? So that kind of concludes our deck here with regards to any type of CISO forwardship moving forward. And also definitely would like to collaborate with everybody and talk about more specifically these type of different types of CISOs and different types of trainings, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Ricoh,
Of course.
for delivering such an insightful and informative session. We found the webinar very engaging and hope it was valuable for you as well. Now, before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that this session is in sync with the EC Council CISO program. EC Council Certified Chief Information Security Officer certification is an executive level program that teaches information security concepts from a management and leadership perspective. It covers all the components required to succeed in a C-level cybersecurity position, including audit management, governance, information controls, human capital management, strategic program development, and financial expertise. There are over 6,000 CISO job vacancies, and an experienced certified CISO professional in US who can earn between $200,000 to $260,000 per annum. If you're interested in learning more, please participate in the poll that's going to be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you soon.
So that CISO training that you're talking about, I highly suggest everybody look at that. It's a great training program. I took it myself. Great people, great context. I actually am looking at the book right now, and it'll be one of the books that I always use forever.
Thank you so much, Ricoh. So, Ricoh, shall we start with the Q&A?
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
Okay. So our first question to you is, which skill set should anyone need to start to become a CISO? Okay, so this question is from a student. His background is non-pen testing and ethical hacking, but he wants to move forward. So what's your opinion in pen testing and ethical hacking? is forensic a good lead to take, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah,
Basically he needs your opinion.
that's a good question. So penetration testing and ethical hacking is a really good skill set to have. That gives you a defensive and a proactive approach of what it looks like, right? And you can help drive those initiatives. So I want you to think outside the box just a little bit more. Forensics is a great deal, but remember that's what post happens. Look at it from a proactive perspective and say, okay, what skill sets or what security domains, okay? And you can look at it from the minor attack framework, or you can look at it from the Chief Information Security book that EC Council has. But there are specific domains that like access control and other ones that will help you understand what you need to do to better secure the organizations. You don't have to master all the domains, but you can pretty much be an expert in all of them very, very easily, especially being a pen tester. Because remember, you're trying to get in, and as a CISO, you're trying to keep people from coming in. So use those skill sets. I think right now, understanding all the domains, whatever it's you want to specialize in. Remember, a CISO, you can be all kinds of CISOs, but what type of CISO? You want to be healthcare CISO? Do you want to be a finance CISO, or where do you want to start? So I would start there, find out the domains, and become very affluent in those. I hope that helps, by the way.
Yes, thank you, Rico, for answering that question. Next question to you is how to implement military skills to an organization to foster teamwork in a cybersecurity team.
That's good. That's a really good question. So I can tell you what not to do. Okay, so check this out. When I was fresh out of the army, I would, when I was in the army, I actually give a lot of briefings. I was like, hey, soldiers, blah, blah. And remember, you're a leader, you're giving directives, you're giving orders, right? Yes and no. As a CISO, it has to be very collaborative because I'm gonna tell you right now, someone is smarter than you and knows more than you. So you have to be more collaborative. Your job as a CISO is to provide the beacon and the light, saying, hey, that's where we're going, that's where we need to be. Open up the forum. What do you think? Ian, James, whomever, Sarah, Gabby, whoever, let's hear your input. What do you think is the best route to get here? And then by natural fluidity and cycle, you're gonna move forward. But just be very mindful of this. As the NCO, right, in the United States Army, it was very difficult because whenever your soldiers mess up, you would just chew them out and like you're doing this and this. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. You have to lead with grace, dignity, and respect.
Thank you so much, Rico, for answering that question. Next question to you is how much of hands-on implementation is part of your actual daily work routine?
Yeah, so I would say about 30%, right? First, your drive, or sorry, hold on, depends where you are. If you're a startup operational CISO, you're gonna have about 60 to 40% of your hands-on technical operations because you're the one doing it, okay? When you go to sustainment, transformative, and also regulator, you're kind of driving the boat, so you're directing people how to do their technical assessments and the technical skill sets. So it really depends where you are. My day right now, because I do so much, is about 60 to 70% hands-on technical, and then the rest I'm having to report up to executives, different board members and whatnot.
Thank you, Rico. Our next question to you is in middle and small business, there are no CISO role. So what do you think about a CISO as a service?
I think it's a brilliant idea. And here's why there's no CISOs at small to business roles. It's too expensive, right? Small to medium sized businesses do $1 million and below, or maybe $5 million at the most, which is okay. But when you look at a salary for a CISO, a good CISO is, anywhere from 150 to 200,000. That's a lot of money, man. So what I would do is if you want to be a vCISO or a fractional CISO or whatever you want to call it, basically your CISO on demand, is go to your clients or whoever it is and say, for X amount of money, I would do this for you. And here's how much it's going to cost. But just remember this, you are in the business of getting business and keeping business. So you better deliver. If you don't, you're fired, or if not, worse, you're sued. So pick your poison.
Thank you, Rico, for answering that question. Our next question to you is how do CISOs see the latest threat landscape?
So the latest threat landscape is you're going to have to go through lots of dinners. I'll tell you that, right? I swear I get invited to a steak dinner every month. Um, the other one is collaboration. Like you meet other CISOs and you meet with them, whether it's coffee or tacos, right? Those are my two things. Sit down with them and like, hey guys, what are the things that you're kind of facing? And everyone's facing something different, but it's pretty much the same thing, right? In their own way. The other thing is you can subscribe to CISA, you can subscribe to threat indicators, blah blah, and also be monitoring of what legislation is doing and whatnot. But I really believe that going out there and meeting with people, not only from a digital perspective, like on the Zoom, but also going down to like I'm here in Nashville. You just go over there and you say like, hey dude, I'm taking 2 hours of my day. Let's sit down, let's chat and whatnot. And it's be very fruitful for you to do that.
Thank you, Rico, for answering that question. Next question to you is, what was your biggest challenge during your journey?
I believe my ego, because I was like, hey, you know, I'm a hot shot, finished fresh out of law school. I got 3 master's degrees. I know everything. I don't know everything. I'll tell you that right now. I laugh at myself a lot. The other part is a sense of humility and humility. You got to be humble because, give you an example. The person who the first question was pen tester, right? I know about pen testing. I know what needs done. I know how to scope them. I know how to make them work and whatnot. But am I a pen tester? No. So right now, that person is smarter than I am. So I had to check my ego quite a bit. And then the other thing is, I actually had to put myself in a flight or fight syndrome. Like, how bad did I want to be a CISO? I believe until recently, right, like the last 7 years, I wanted to be a CISO for a wrong reason. Because I wanted the people to look at me and be like, I'm Ricoh Danielson, I'm a CISO, right? Wrong, wrong, wrong. I needed to be of servant leadership, right? I needed to serve the business. I needed to serve the people that I work with and work with them, not and work for them. But at the same aspect, nobody owns me and owes me. So that's how I kind of stumbled through my CISO journeyship and still am, right?
Thank you so much, Rico, for letting us know your journey.
Yeah.
Our next question to you is, what is the expected skills to become CISO?
Yeah. So you remember that you are the person that everyone's looking to. So you better have an answer or the answer or a answer, whatever, right? The specific skill sets I would say is like risk management, right? You got to know what risks are to your business. You got to know how to manage those risks and mitigate those risks. Threat management, that's another one. Right now, I believe a lot of CISOs do not have a lot of incident response experience. I really believe that you need to know how to handle an incident, a crisis. On top of that, you need to have soft skills. A lot of people are going to view you as a CISO, as a security person, as the office of no. Like, no, not going to do that. And they already have that in their mind. Rico's a bad man, whatever, whatever. But you have to mitigate that and be like, hey, we're here as a collaborative effort. So soft skills and also business acumen. I've seen many, many times where we have had a technical person become a CISO and they get wrapped up around the axle of all these technical things. And I'm like, we're trying to facilitate a business here, dude. Come on. So those are some of the recommendations I definitely would work on.
Thank you, Rico, for answering that question. We'll take last question for the day.
Yeah.
What are the current challenges for the technology?
What are the current challenges for the technology?
Yes.
So well, that's a pretty vague question. So when it comes to technologies, right, it really depends on how fast you want to go and where you're trying to achieve. But um, some of the current um, issues that a lot of technologies is facing is that you're trying to appease the masses without really trying to secure your device first. Remember, security is a principal delivery of products to customers and clients. So if you release a product that's insecure, or you do something that's insecure, you're actually doing a disservice. So I think a lot of technologists are just releasing stuff and they're like, hey, here you go, no problem, without really paying attention of the real implications, the tertiary, fourth, ninth implications that might be happening a little bit later down the road. So I would definitely take an assessment if you can and say, hey, my microphone is doing this. I need to assess what's going to be the impact and what's a 5, 10, 15-year impact of that.
Thank you again to our wonderful speaker, Rico, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared with our global audience. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Now, before we conclude the webinar, Rico, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you guys can find me on LinkedIn. If you guys have any questions about being a CISO, hit me up. You're going to get fired. You're going to get laid off. It's going to be a tough journey. Remember, being a CISO is not for the faint or weak-hearted, right? The best thing you can do is set your sight on being a CISO for the right reasons, do a good job, and be a good person, and you'll be surprised how well you do.
Thank you so much, Rico.